my effort, my attitude, and my decisions, right? Those are the three things that I can do, and that keeps me on the journey, but I don't have any control over how the journey continues to unfold or ends. Today, I'm joined by Dr. Jacqueline Campbell. Dr. Jacqueline is a conscious leadership strategist, author, and global speaker on self-mastery. Her diverse background bridges neuroscience, trauma recovery, and optimal performance strategies for effective self-leadership. She helps purpose-driven individuals unlock their highest potential, creating lives of freedom, impact, and alignment. Welcome, Jacqueline. Great to see you.
Thanks, Daryl. I really appreciate your time today. Thanks for having me on.
Absolutely. No, we had a chance to speak the other day, and I thought it was really cool, and learned a little bit about each other, but love to do a much deeper dive today.
Absolutely. And I loved hearing your story on my podcast too. And I feel like people who resonate with the, recovering and self-transformation, and then, tying in your grit with your healing, like it becomes a way of life. So we just kind of, when you meet your own kind, you got to stick together, right?
That's right. Yeah. I'm so drawn to the word grit. And I don't know why. It's an interesting thing, but when I saw that on your podcast, Resilient Minds podcast, Stories of Grit, Growth, and Success, I just love that word, and because I feel like it exemplifies what it takes, right? That's what it takes.
It does. And when you've built it, because it was usually not a choice, you had to.
Right.
And unfortunately, and this doesn't come from ego, but when somebody doesn't have it. And usually when they don't have it, they also don't have that level of respect and humility that comes with life. Can I cuss on this?
Oh yeah.
Okay, cool. I was like, wait, like when life just kicks your ass. Like it teaches you. And I think that the life lessons and pain and struggle, I think that's the best teacher in grit.
Could not agree more. As I have gotten my ass kicked through my lifetime, it drove me toward like, man, surrender. I don't know what's going on. Somebody help me. And that was a lot in my younger years, but also as I've gotten older and I've tried to do new and different and more challenging things, I've got to dig a little deeper into that pile of grit and suck it up sometimes, because there's things now. I mean, honestly, I never thought I'd have a podcast. I'm not really a public facing dude. I've always been behind the scenes, with my head down, just kind of going hard. And then I wrote books, and they're like, oh, well, you should be on podcasts and you should start your own podcast and this and that. So I'm like, oh, okay. So here I am. And I love it. But sometimes it's still scary, which tells me I'm alive.
Right. Yeah, you're human. I was doing a video earlier today. I'm not very good at videos. I can connect with a person or an audience, but you put me in front of a camera and you tell me to talk with no human being there, I stutter, I glitch, I get overwhelmed, I get, my hands get clammy, and I can't find my words. And I'm like, I cannot connect with a device. It just doesn't work. But in today's day and age, that doesn't work for marketing at all. So you got to work through it. So I take out my breathing exercise and I walk away, and then I come back and try again. And then I just, at the end of the day, when you're talking about letting go of control, perfectionism can't be there. It's not allowed, because if you try to be perfect, you're going to completely hold yourself back. And so what I decided to do, actually, which is, a funny story for this, everybody who's an entrepreneur or self-employed listening to this, I'm like, instead of this training being $250, it's going to be $99, because I'm doing the very best I can with this goddamn video.
I love it.
I love it. It is.
That's great. We're going to discount this one. Yeah, that's good. I like that a lot, actually. And it's funny because I'm I'm with you on that with public speaking. Like I am, and I've done it and I've done trainings. I've done a lot of stuff like that, but I really don't like it. And I've got to work through that. You know, can I do it? Yes, I can do it. But I want to be, you know, comfortable, cool, calm, collected. I'm sure and mostly I am. I'm sure I can fake it until I make it. But maybe we'll get offline and you can tell me how I get better at that.
If you can, when we get offline, you can tell me how to get better at making videos there. Like we just share knowledge, right? But at
Yeah.
the end of the day, like there's always a fine balance between, because you have to calm down the trauma, right? And the limiting beliefs, and then calm your nervous system down because it's just trying to learn something new sometimes. And sometimes it's because it's something new that we're struggling with. And sometimes it really is trauma. And sometimes that thing just doesn't resonate. So no matter how much work you try to do, no matter how much effort you put into it, it's just not your thing. And that's okay. But trying to decipher all of those different things in the moment when you're overwhelmed, that's not a good feeling at all.
Right. And you know, part of my past has to do with and doing a lot of, you know, investigative Daryl work over a long time. But part of my past is, you know, I'm only good enough if I'm performing well. And so that's, you know, I'm scared to death of sucking at something. And I don't like that feeling. So I feel like, and you know, I've played sports my whole life. I've done a lot of things, sales, all kinds of things. I mean, everything in life is you have to get better over time. Nobody starts out great, right? So, and I think it's just funny that, you know, so many years later, that little thing, it doesn't stop me, but it's definitely there.
Right. Which just leads to everybody who's listening who like is wondering, because I've talked to so many people who are like, when does it end? It never ends, dude. Like it's always there. Your traumas are always wanting to come back. Your limiting beliefs are always, it's like paved roads that if you don't have a new road to get on, and if you don't stay stable on that new road, it's always wanting to come back because your nervous system remembers. It's the prior ways of coping or behaving. And it's because the old programming was effective because it got in so deep that like it's okay to just say you're always going to have to try to put effort, or it's, if it wants to come back, it's okay. Right? Like if you, whether I was going to say get off the wagon, but like no pun intended, dude. Like right?
Good.
Like everybody has their thing that they had to be in recovery from, whether it be a substance or a behavior or a mindset. And if it's wanting to come back, that doesn't mean that you're doing it wrong. It really doesn't.
Right. Absolutely. No, I couldn't agree more. And I think, I mean, that's where grit meets fear. And so who's gonna end up winning? And for me, I can't allow the fear to win. Because I'm, you know, for so many years I've been doing things that I'm scared of, and I love it. You know, I don't like going in, but I like it when I've done it. And the funny thing is when I look back and I say, well, that wasn't so bad. You think it's this giant elephant in the room, right? And then you look back, you're like, well, it was nothing, right?
Yeah.
So silly.
It's like, and then after, like people use this analogy with women having children, like giving birth all the time. Like as soon as the pain's done, they forget it. And they're like, I want another baby. I think that's the same with high achievers. They're like, this sucks. I'm never going to do this again. And then as soon as it's, you know, smooth sailing, they're like, what other mountain can I climb now?
Right. Absolutely. And that is a wonderful thing because, right, like you said, there's no end. There's no like, oh, okay, I'm done. You know, like until they're whatever, they're kicking dirt in my face or whatever it is. I just got to keep going. And I love that because, and this is a little bit of an aside, but I know a lot of people who are, and historically have been like, oh, I'm scared to retire. I'm scared to stop doing what I'm doing. And because I've known so many people who have retired and just kind of faded away into nothingness or died or whatever. And I'm like, and I'm not scared to retire. I just won't retire because I love doing stuff, and I love learning stuff and doing new things and having the shit scared out of me and all that sort of stuff. Um, yeah. Anyway, so all right, and normally I start off with this question. We're a few minutes in, but and wonderful conversation. So thank you for that. So Jacqueline, if you could tell me about an event or a time in your life that caused you to show up for your life in a different way.
Well, there's two. When you had originally told me that you're going to ask that question, and I think I'll touch on both of them actually. And usually I don't know why. I always feel like if you're in the flow of conversation when you're on the podcast, like whatever the audience really needs to know, it will come out naturally. But I'm feeling very drawn to share a little bit of both. One, as a woman, I went from the military into the, being a wife and a mother. That was a completely different world. And I didn't know how to be nurturing and loving. I just knew I was, already applying for the FBI, trying to get out of the military and thinking that was the next chapter of my life. And I wound up pregnant, so I had no idea how to be that version of myself that I really, really wanted to tap into. And I'm so sorry for all of the oldest children and even the second born in every family that ever existed for all of time, because you're always the guinea pigs.
Right.
And my oldest daughter, she was 6 when I got her in the marriage. I was pregnant. And I had no idea what I was doing. So I had to learn. And I wanted to learn as fast as I could because I could not mess up my children. Right. And our goal as parents, of course, always do better than your parents, who probably did really, really well in comparison to their parents, who again, probably did really well. Right. So that was one period, and a complete transformation transpired because it was the biggest motivator that I had. Right. Like I just didn't want to do that to my children. Second one was another huge transformation, and it was moving into from being just a mental health therapist. I wanted to scale my business. I eventually ended up moving into coaching and speaking, doing more like training for entrepreneurs, stuff like that. I had no idea that I would end up here though, because of this other business, which I ended up letting go of, because honestly, I could not afford to file bankruptcy. I just didn't have the money. So it was taking me down, me and my children. I was suffocating in it. And I had to realize that I had bet everything that I had, my savings, my retirement, my paycheck for, about 2 years. I was a single mom, getting my doctorate, homeschooling the kids. COVID happened. I was not good enough. I didn't have enough. And there was so many things against me. I was not going to succeed. And I was so toxically optimistic. I'm like, heck yeah, I am. I'm going to make it happen. And what happened? It did not happen. And so I had no choice but to let go and really confront the parts of me that were so damn stubborn that it was hurting myself and my kids and everybody around me. I just needed to let go. And so giving into that piece of me that just went with the flow instead of pushing, like a lot of pain subsided. And I felt so much peace afterwards. But then I'm like, but now look at the mess you have to clean up because you just didn't stop. So it was a huge eye-opening period of my life.
Wow. Yeah. Huge.
Yeah.
I can relate, and in many ways, because being a former a person in recovery who's been in recovery for a long time, it's like I know how to be a nut job. I can do that really well, and I can go hard and long and just as far as I can take things. And I have done bad things to my body by doing that, and just really damaging myself. So I can relate to that. And one of the words that I don't know if you used the word allow, but I think you meant that you right. At some point allowed life to happen. and you got in the flow of living, as opposed to that constant sort of push or battle, or, and boy, can I relate to that, because allowing is one of the most important words in my vocabulary, but also one of the most important aspects of living for me, because I can try to grab life by the throat constantly and like, all right, here's what we're doing. And, the toxic positivity, that's another very interesting conversation. But so we should talk about that. But and I'm so happy that you're, moving forward from those things. And what was, I guess, in your recovery, what's the most important component that you've had to sort of install in you to move forward and move your life forward?
Well, what's interesting is my recovery, it changed. And anybody who knows anything about psychology or behavioral modification, or who has been in recovery, they already know. Like, you don't even have to read a textbook or have to have this degree that says that you're special or important, that you may know what you're talking about. If you've lived recovery, you know that if you don't deal with the underlying issue, it's just going to move to a different behavior or a different substance or a different habit, whatever it is. The underlying issue is always going to be there until you get the underlying issue. So it went from one thing to another thing to another thing over a couple of decades. And overall, what I am consistently in recovery from is wanting control. Thinking that if there's something that I can do about it, then I will be safe. When in actuality, control is it's completely false. It's a lie. You only have control with what you are going to decide to do, like your choices, right? But I used to say I'm a recovering perfectionist, but I'm like, that's still the same thing, right? So the number one thing that has helped me is accepting limitation, which it would never be part of my personality before. And I was actually interviewing somebody on a podcast months ago when he used that example of the term toxic positivity. And I'm like, that's what it was. There's no term for that, or at least I hadn't heard of it. But like, if you are so positive that you think everything will be okay all of the time, you're probably not looking at reality. And I did it, several times, and I had kept having to kick my ass enough for me to see it. And then I think there's this balance between accepting what you do have control over, managing that, and then letting go of everything else. And that being okay, because it's a balance. Once you accept limitation, then you can actually take control. Right? But it's fear that makes us think that we have to control everything.
Right. Absolutely. No, I couldn't agree more. I've been that way in my life, and it's for me, you talked earlier about breath work, and it's the practices that help me step back a little bit and just have a little bit of breathing room, so to speak, between what I want and how sort of life happens and how I respond, and where am I in that mix. And it goes back to the allowing, like my effort, my attitude, and my decisions, right? Those are the three things that I can do, and that keeps me on the journey, but I don't have any control over how the journey continues to unfold or ends, right? It's just completely out of my control. And that's why I had to go into some of those practices that I do, which is, the breath work and the meditation and the gratitude, and like, dude, you're allowed. I didn't know for the longest time that I was allowed to chill. I'm actually allowed to chill.
Yeah.
Sounds like that's what you're saying, Jacqueline.
Yeah, that we're allowed to chill. There's There's not very many high performers or high achievers that I would say that either if they have learned it, they didn't want to, right? Like it's not a natural thing that you get both of them at the same time. You're allowed to chill and go with the flow, and you're a high achiever. It's like you do one or the other. But the way that I look at it now, and the individuals that I associate with now, they've been humbled enough that they're like, yeah, it's okay. You can just chill. We don't have to make it into a thing.
Right. It doesn't have to be a mark, a black mark on our resume, like, oh, I can chill now. Right.
Yeah.
It's real and it's necessary. And I've had, and this is a little, well, not really off topic, but I've had autoimmune stuff in my life happen, because of my inability to chill.
Yeah.
And they're gone, like they're asymptomatic, gone. And, one was pretty serious. And it's, it's diet and it's exercise and a whole bunch of things, but mostly I've learned that I'm allowed to chill. And I think that's been just absolutely crucial. So this brings me into another question. And my definition of success has changed significantly over time. Tell me what your definition of success, or how your definition of success has changed for you.
I love that, because mine has also changed over time, multiple times, and it might change again, who knows? And if it does, I'll let it, because I don't try to fight it anymore. But really, it's allowing myself to be in peace and in stillness, regardless of whatever happens. And it's no longer a goal. It's no longer an achievement. It's a state of being, but it's maintaining that state. Because I feel like it can be so hard. And when it is hard for me, I just recognize it's just my stuff trying to come back. Or it's me trying to level up and going to the next level. And it's my old stuff trying to hold me back, right? Like whatever it is, it's just recognizing it and reflecting on it, working on whatever's coming up along the path. But I'm consistently, it is like throughout the day, I have multiple things, morning journaling and meditation with visualizations. And then I have a breath work after I take a shower right before I get into work. And I either do yoga or I work out almost every single day. After I eat lunch, I sit for a few minutes in silence. At the end of the day, I decompress. I have a gratitude exercise right next to my badass achievements exercise, right? Like they're balancing. And then I have quiet time at the end of the day with the meditation/visualization. Like that sounds like a lot when you tell people about it, but I'm like, you have no idea. I have to have it, because if not, my stuff's going to come back. It wants to. I've reprogrammed. I've done all the things. I've worked on the healing. It knows when you're weak, and it can come in and derail everything that you are working for. So I have those lifelines. So to maintain my state of peace, that's what I would consider to be achievement or success.
I love it. I love it. That is so cool. And mine is not quite as expansive. It's, most of it's right in the morning before I get going, with breath work, meditation, gratitude, and, exercise and that sort of thing. And then, I think one very important component of showing up for myself is, what am I putting in my body? From a nutrition and or food perspective. I think that's a crucial component for me. But the interesting, I don't know if this is true for you, Jacqueline, but I can be a defiant little cuss. And so if somebody tells me, even if I tell myself like, you have to do this 7 days a week, no days off, da 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 da. And I'm like, no, I don't. So what I do is I'll do it, either 5 or 6 days a week. The meditation and the breath work is generally 6 days a week. Yeah. But I allow myself a day off so I don't feel, because it's easy for me to feel hemmed in.
Yeah.
oh, I have to. And then it defeats the purpose, because then there's stress or guilt or shame around if I don't.
Right.
Do you find that to be true in your experience?
Absolutely, because we're humans, so we can make anything unhealthy, even if it's a healthy thing, because we just tend to overdo everything or try to get it right, and we're rigid with it, or we can be. So I recognize that on the weekends, I intentionally try to not plan anything. If I'm, reading a book, I usually try to make it just a leisure book. If I do a meditation, it's because I'm super excited about this new thing that I'm learning. It's not like part of my regimented have to do's. And I actually don't meditate, and I don't do breath work on the weekends, because I don't want it to become a have to do. I want to just be. Same thing when I go hiking, because it used to be like an every Saturday thing, but then it started to want to become rigid. Like, oh, I missed it today. No, that's your perfection. I always wanted to try to get everything right. Like, it's cool. Just let it be.
Yeah. No, that's great. I was actually speaking with someone on my podcast a week or two ago, and she said, she's like, I don't, and she's a coach, and she's just really, she was very, very cool. I should introduce you guys, actually.
Yeah,
She
I love
was
that.
awesome. But she said, I don't like the word discipline. I use the word ritual.
Mm,
And I've kind of been kicking that around for myself personally. Discipline for me isn't a negative connotation.
right.
To me, it's freedom.
Mm,
If I'm doing the things for myself that allow me to have peace of mind and peace of heart and a healthy body and all of those things, to me, that's freedom. If I'm shackling myself with dysfunction and unhealthiness and weakness in my mind and allowing all kinds of bad stuff in my life, then I'm not free. So my disciplines allow me the freedom. I wasn't convinced on the whole ritual thing, but what do you think about that as far as just framing that for ourselves?
Well, I understand the point she was making, not to be too rigid, but I mean, discipline, the how you describe it can be rigid, or it can be something like freedom, because it's our subjective experience. But I actually think that I have it. Is this going to be audio and visual, or just
Yes.
audio?
Yes.
Okay. So I'll bring out two books. One, I actually have my kids read this when they're in trouble, so that I don't have to ground them or anything like that. Right? It's actually Jocko Willink's Discipline Equals Freedom.
Very cool.
So I definitely resonate with the discipline. It's part of my philosophy with peak performance with emotional intelligence too, which is my my program that I do with leadership development. But I also understand having a flow with it. So the balance of that for me would be to give yourself grace when and how you need to, which would make something more like a ritual. But I don't hear negativity with it. The other book was Angela, I think it's Duckworth. It's called Grit. I was going to bring that out earlier, but those are two noteworthy books to talk about since we were discussing the topics.
Yeah, for sure. I read a lot of. I'm more philosophical in terms of what I read, and there's this book called The Five Spirits. My wife and I see an acupuncturist, and it's an unbelievable book. It's Taoist alchemy sort of, and it's insane. And sometimes I can get to be, I can live in the philosophy, and I love the philosophy, but I also love you got to put it out on the street. You got to bring the philosophy to life. And I think that's a crucial part of it for me. So things like Jocko and things like, I haven't read Grit, but they're about putting it on the street, which I think is, we can have all the ideas, we can have all the educated, the education, we can have all that stuff, but But if we're not on the street doing the work, showing up, and it's all just, it's nothing unless it's implemented, right? I mean, that's
Right.
what it takes.
And that would be more of an action-oriented, assertive way of looking at it. But I still see it as a balance. Yes, you have to take action and implement it in your daily life. But I also, I prefer I guess I just do them as a balance because I read very intellectual science-based books, but I really love the philosophical and the science that even borders woo-woo, because it just broadens your mind. And I mean, sometimes I'll dive into woo-woo stuff too, but at the end of the day, like, we need the balance, right? Like, who's going to expand your mind if you're so rigid with always making sure you do things the way you're supposed to?
100%. Yeah. And we talked a little bit about that earlier, just rules following and that sort of thing.
Yeah. Philosophy is not following rules. It's, well, what if?
It's expansion.
Yeah.
Curiosity and wonder and, all of those sorts of things, which when you mention the word rigid, the first thing that came into my mind was religion for me. And that was, when I was a kid, I was raised Lutheran. You said recovering perfectionist. I'm a recovering Lutheran as well as recovering other stuff. But, the drugs, the alcohol, that kind of thing. And then many things in between. But one of my things that I just think is so critically important is to not hem ourselves in with our belief system and allow that to expand. When I was a kid, it was like, oh, well, I can't do that. I can't do that. I can't do that because I might go to hell. And it's like, well, as I became sober and got into recovery, and I'm like, and I took all my belief system stuff and, sort of metaphorically threw it all out on a table and said, okay, what are you doing? What do you believe and why? And is it working? And, can you expand that? And I was introduced to a lot of things that would expand my belief system. And it's been the most wonderful experience of my entire life. And I love it I look at it like the Big Bang, right? It just keeps going and going and going. And sounds like you're on board with that type of looking at life.
Yeah. I also had a similar experience. I was raised Christian, and in my marriage, I'm divorced now, and that was a completely different version of me too, but trying to follow the rules and knowing that it didn't resonate with me. It didn't make any sense. And I really found God for the first time, I want to say, when I stopped going to church and stopped reading the Bible, and now I, every once in a while, kind of dabble, but I still find like it doesn't, just sit with them instead, and because I feel like I also get so much more fulfillment and so much more guidance that way. That makes more sense, in my opinion. But I mean, that's what happens with me.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Absolutely. And, people say, do you go to church? And I say, no, but I say my, God and I are very tight.
Yeah.
And that's absolutely true. I was reading some Jordan Peterson this morning, actually. And I love Bible verses, but I don't ascribe them to religion. I just think some of it's just beautiful writing. And the whole, when I was a kid, they were like, asking, it will be given you, seeking, you will find, knocking, it will be open unto you. And Jordan Peterson's like, well, you don't just ask for stuff and get it. You got to actually show up and do the stuff. That's why it says, seek and ye shall find, knock and it shall be open unto you. Like you got to do the stuff. It's not like, free stuff by the side of the road. You just go grab it. It doesn't work that way. And I think that's a huge message, and a very important message. And my take on religion, and I have nothing against it, and I think it works really well for a lot of people, and that's completely cool. But But for me, it didn't work because I looked at it as, and I think this can be pervasive, is I looked at it like, well, all I have to do is pray and everything will be fine. Or all I have to do is say, I believe in this and everything will be fine. Well, no, I was missing the boat. I was missing the do it part of my life and the figure it out part of my life.
Yeah.
I think that's, we are charged, I believe, with, and I'll use faith as an example, or strength. Let's use strength. I could pray to God for strength, and God says, here's what he says to me. He says, Daryl, I've already given you the strength. Go do it.
Yeah.
You already have it. You don't have to pray for it.
Right.
Same thing with faith. Dude, go do it.
I think that is a common misconception, not only in the religious community, but also in the law of attraction, right? And I feel like this is just a mentality. And I mean, whatever, to each their own. But at the end of the day, and I found this out for myself as well, like you can manifest something and you can pray for something, but if you don't do your part, and that you really can't get mad if it doesn't happen.
Right.
No.
Right. Don't pray for a hole and then lean on your shovel. That's one of my favorite sayings ever.
I love that.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's why I'm still doing videos.
Right on. Yeah, exactly.
And that's what you're doing public speaking, right?
Practice. I mean, that's what life is. That's how I look at life, is I'm just keep going, keep practicing, keep getting better, and don't forget to keep enjoying it, and do what it takes to enjoy the journey, because the journey is, when I take time to stop and just appreciate the journey, those are just some of the best times of my days.
Yeah, I would agree.
So, Jacqueline, thank you so much. We've been rapping here for a bit, and I've appreciated every moment of it. How do we find you out there in this universe, and how do our listeners connect with you?
Sure. We actually just launched a new website, Dr. Jacqueline Campbell /speaks. And you can find information about me, my trainings. But if you're also on LinkedIn, I'm on the other socials as well, but LinkedIn is usually where a lot of my engagement is. And it's Dr. Jacqueline Campbell, ND, LPCS.
Very cool. We'll have all the information in the show notes. And thank you so much, Jacqueline. It's been really a pleasure to catch up and learn more about you. So thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you for joining us on the Show Up podcast. To learn more about me, my coaching, or my books, please feel free to visit my website, daryldittmer.com, DarylDittmer.com. Thank you.